Being and Caring, A Psychology for Living by Victor Daniels and Laurence J. Horowitz, as read by the Happy President. Part 1, Foundations, Chapter 6, The Structure of Awareness. My awareness is my life. It is the source of my survival. My lack of awareness is my limit and could mean my end. Developing our awareness means learning to live in contact with our own experience. We can easily be so caught up in what we're doing that we don't realize how we are doing it. The question at stake, declared Epictetus, is this: are we in our senses or are we not? As with any capacity, increasing our awareness takes time and effort. In this chapter, we explore the elements of awareness and examine methods of becoming more perceptive. What awareness is and isn't. Awareness is the sensing of what exists, how it exists, and where and when it exists, its internal and external context. In contrast to knowledge, which is a file cabinet of information we learned in the past, awareness involves present sensing along with thinking about how present events connect with other aspects of our lives. Just as our direct experience becomes more meaningful when we connect it with the rest of what we know, many educators now are realizing that we learn much more when our thinking occurs in a context of experiencing. Zen teachers speak of developing a mirror mind that can reflect whatever image falls upon it clearly and without distortion or interpretation. This isn't easy to learn. For example, Nadine, a college junior, fell into a trap that's a common one for undergraduate students in psychology. She comments, "When I started taking psychology courses, I kept myself busy asking why about everything I saw in myself and others. I thought I was gaining understanding by all the questioning, but I ended up more confused than ever. I was getting knowledge without awareness." With awareness, often you don't need to figure out why something is happening. Instead, as you become more aware of your actions and reactions, you begin to discover answers to some of your questions. The events inside you may just need time to emerge. Although awareness often leads to a reviewing, it doesn't always go in an expected direction. When a couple undergoing therapy become more aware of their problems, for example, they may improve their relationship or they may split up. What happens with awareness is unpredictable. That's both the delight and the frustration of discovery. Motivation influences our awareness. When pride and memory argue, the old saying goes, pride wins. I may want things to be different than they are, so I conveniently rewrite my personal history book, then forget that I rewrote it. Or I distract myself from noticing what I don't want to see or hear, then conclude that things are as I wanted them to be. So a useful way to start expanding my awareness is to assume that I'm not so aware of what I do, and to assume that there are areas of myself that I do not know well. I'm wise to assume that some of my thoughts, emotions, and even overt actions escape the scrutiny of my attending mind. For if I assume total knowledge of myself, I close myself to discovering anything except what I already think I know. I become impervious to new discoveries. Full awareness is possible only when seeing, hearing, or grasping the truth is more important than getting something else I want. Otherwise, I distort my awareness in the service of my wants. It's important to note that self-awareness is totally different from self-consciousness. In self-consciousness, a small bit of my attention goes to noticing what I'm doing or how I look. Mostly, I'm worrying about what others are thinking about me. Mark Twain observed that others do very little of that kind of thinking, so relax. Just note that if you start to feel self-conscious, it's a signal to pull your attention out of projective thinking and into active observing. Developing our awareness. Developing our awareness involves learning to observe the process rather than getting lost in directing it. Otherwise, we end up repeating again and again the same old cycles of thought, emotion, or behavior. But as we learn to strengthen and focus our awareness, we begin to watch ourselves unfold and we experience our world more vividly. Awareness by and in itself can be constructive. When we become aware, we can rely on the wisdom of our organism. Awareness and self-acceptance. Awareness and self-acceptance are reciprocal. In my fullest awareness, I am seeing, hearing, and feeling what is, including my judging of people, events, and things as bad or wrong, which usually colors my awareness. So there is a crucially important connection. When I observe and I accept what I do, think, and feel as the way I am now, including my judging behavior as right or wrong, I can perceive what I'm doing most clearly. Only when I'm aware of what I'm doing do I have the option of doing something else. The exciting paradox is that by accepting and acknowledging myself as completely all right just as I am now, at this instant in my life, new discoveries and directions become available. When people first start out in therapy, frequently they are afraid to see themselves because they think they won't like what they see. They are judging themselves, and this judging is experienced with pain. Witnessing without judging reduces internal conflict and self-victimization. Growth comes not through goals of unrealistic perfection, but out of a place of inner support and self-love. You can begin moving into a growth circle. Doing less depreciative judging allows you to be more aware. Increased awareness helps you be alert to when you judge. There is no good awareness or bad awareness. No, my awareness is better than yours. The important event is your observation of what you're doing on the inside and the outside, whatever that is. Attention and distraction. Attention is focused awareness. Bare attention is attention focused on here and now events. It involves two elements: an ability to concentrate, to focus my attention where I want it, and an attentiveness to what is happening in the moment. Zen masters speak of one-pointed attention, focusing on just one thing at a time. For instance, when I watch a sunset, I'm just watching the sunset, not doing anything else. Our ordinary consciousness, however, is many-pointed. As I watch the sunset, my attention darts back and forth between first this thought and then that one. Indeed, most of my attention may go into mental processes that keep me out of my here and now sunset. Gestalt psychologists speak of the figure ground phenomenon. I can drive down a street many times and never notice a certain mailbox. It's just part of the background, or ground against which other things stand out. But suppose I want to mail a letter. Now the mailbox leaps out at me. Suddenly it is the figure, and everything else becomes the ground. Whatever I focus on becomes the figure, and other things fade into the less clearly defined background. One day I notice the sun, the breeze, the trees, the flowers. The next day, in my busy schedule, I'm oblivious to all but pen, paper, and appointments. Interest and attention. What I'm aware of depends not only on what's happening, but also on what I choose to pay attention to. Pearls comments, "The pictures or sounds of the world do not enter us automatically, but selectively. We don't see, we look for, search, scan for something. We don't hear all the sounds of the world. We listen." I'm likely to become fragmented and out of touch with myself if I habitually respond to the stimuli that bid for my attention instead of listening and searching. I stay more centered and more in touch with my aliveness when I actively choose what I attend to. My interest creates the meaning I find in a situation. A mother may have hearing loss and be sleeping 3 rooms away from her baby, but should the baby make an unusual cry, the mother is likely to awaken. Distraction. I used to pay scant attention to people when they talked to me. Time after time, I'd realized that my mind had drifted away. Frequently, I'd have to ask the other person to repeat something. If I didn't ask for a recap, I had to reconcile myself to missing part of what was said and try to fake it to continue the conversation. I'm still sometimes surprised at how much I've missed when I listen to a tape recording of a conversation between another person and me. I'm not always an accurate judge of how well I'm paying attention. If I want to make sure I'm hearing you or that I'm being heard, I'd better double check. If I heard you right, you said, or, "Tell me what you heard me say, will you?" I feel like I didn't say it very clearly. I want to feel free to ask you to repeat what you said if I didn't quite understand it. And I want you to ask me to rephrase if you didn't hear what I said. If we agree on these two things, we will hear each other more often. When I have something to gain, I have little trouble paying attention. Observe yourself. How easily are you distracted from an unpleasant task? From an enjoyable one? One morning, as I was administering an important exam, some workmen started drilling outside. Many students complained, so we gave another form of the exam under quieter conditions. The result? There was no significant difference between the two test scores for any student. Though disturbed by the noise, the students were not distracted. The test was too crucial to them. The encouraging implication is that when it is important enough for us to do so, we all have substantial ability to focus and direct our attention. Attention in everyday tasks. In his intriguing book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, Robert M. Pirsig describes how several principles of awareness and attention can be applied to exacting, demanding jobs. He uses working on a motorcycle as a model. There are 6 principles we'll mention here. First, assume an attitude of modesty. The higher your opinion of yourself, the less likely you are to admit that you've goofed on something and the more likely you are to ignore facts that turn up. A mechanic who has a big ego to defend is at a terrific disadvantage. If modesty does not come easy to you, fake it. The second principle is for those whose anxiety stops them from getting started. Read every book and magazine you can about how to do the repair job, he suggests. Remember, too, that you're after peace of mind, not just a fixed machine, and think the job through before you start to work. You can save time and trouble later by listing everything you're going to do on little slips of paper and then organizing and reorganizing the sequence as you think about the job. The third principle is when you're bored, stop. Boredom means your mind is wandering elsewhere. That's when we make mistakes. We also make them when we're tired. Pirsig turns jobs that bore him most, like greasing and oil changing, into a ritual, paying attention to the ordinary, finding in simple things a beauty that is often overlooked. Pirsig's fourth principle is that impatience is a great cause of mistakes. One cause of impatience is underestimating how long the job will take. The solution is to allow for an indefinite time for the job and to double the allotted time when circumstances force time planning. A fifth Pirsig principle is that overall goals must be scaled down in importance and immediate goals must be scaled up. That can help avoid making big mistakes. Finally, the sixth useful Pirsig principle is called mechanics feel. Many people try to screw bolts on as tight as they'll go and treat other aspects of a job the same way. Mechanics feel involves attending carefully to the material I'm working with, its softness or hardness, its elasticity, and what it tells me about how it wants to be handled. It will let me know just how far to turn the bolt, how much pressure is just enough and not too much. Boredom. Boredom is a de-energizing of my attention. It can function as a useful statement about what I'm doing. It can identify something I don't want to hear. In any event, it can be a way I torture myself and deaden my life. I most often feel bored when I try to pay attention to something that doesn't interest me right then. My options may include finding something interesting in it, changing what's happening, drifting off into my own world of thoughts and fantasies, or leaving. I don't have to poison myself by staying bored. That poison can be real and deadly. For instance, you've probably known old people who died not long after retiring, or who died shortly after their spouses. Others in similar situations find interests that nurture them and sustain them. When you and I are talking, if I'm not interested in what's happening, I can change it. I do you no favor by pretending that I'm interested in what you're saying when I'm not. That poisons us both. When I'm listening because I think I should, I feel dead or resentful, and you and I make little contact. If I'm bored, you may not be vitally interested either. We can probably find something else to do or talk about that we'd both prefer. I can say, I'm not with this right now. Can we come back to it later and talk about something now that I feel involved in too? Or I can suggest something else entirely. When I give you that kind of feedback in a non-judgmental way, I'm saying that I care about you and that we can have many good times with each other. But if you reply, you don't care about me because you're bored with what I'm saying, you're telling me you don't want to know when I'm interested and when I'm not. Or you may be telling me you don't feel my caring for you, so I need to let you know I care. In a group, when I say I'm bored, it opens the way for other people to say how they feel too. If enough of us are bored, we can all do something else. If I'm the only one, or almost the only one, then either I find a way to enjoy some aspect of what's going on, or I leave. I find some things inherently more interesting than others, yet I can interest myself more or less in anything or anyone. People who are not like those I usually spend my time with are especially interesting to me when I open myself to hearing what they have to say. As I develop my ability to be interested in wherever I am and whomever I'm with, I'm less at the mercy of circumstances and I have less need to be entertained. Emptiness. Our capacity to be aware is hindered if our minds are too full. We need some spaces between our activities and our thoughts. Dave, an engineer, fills up every moment with activity, never giving himself a quiet moment to be with his thoughts and feelings. When the TV goes off, he picks up a newspaper or starts talking with anyone available. When he goes out, he keeps his portable radio with earphones on constantly. Our culture encourages us to be too busy, to fill our consciousness with as many things and activities as we can. Space that isn't filled with things and time that isn't filled with action can seem threatening. People in counseling often deal with such feelings. Sometimes clients report sensing a sort of frightening black hole or deep pit inside them, so they grab for whatever they can, hanging on desperately so they won't fall in. Fritz Perls encouraged people who experience such feelings to let go, to go ahead and plunge into the darkness, being attentive to what they feel and observe. Again and again, people find that when they get past their panic, they attain a valuable experience of their interior worlds. Perls spoke of the emptiness that we sometimes so fear as a fertile void that holds important keys to change. He also spoke of holes in the personality. These places where we don't allow our energy to flow may make themselves known to us in fantasies and dreams. Someone who seldom reaches out to others dreams of a man with no arms. Someone who perennially leans on others for support instead of providing for herself dreams of having no feet. Such a hole in the personality points to a way we can re-own and develop a disowned capacity. When I try to flee from my emptiness, I'm hesitant about what aspects of myself I might discover, aspects of me that may be paired with memories of painful or punishing experiences. There may be times when you feel the kind of frustrated emptiness in which nothing seems to have much meaning, and you get an uneasy feeling of something wrong because you lack defined activity or direction. At such times, we need to remember that a pause in a person's life is seldom an accident. It can be a time of many possibilities. You have a greater degree of freedom when you're not locked tightly into undertakings and directions. Usually, you create your pauses in some way, knowingly or not. Lewis comments, "Sometimes I'll be walking along, and the need to pause is so strong I stop dead still." The bind comes when you think you should be doing something else, instead of using the pause as a time for growth and exploration. When you have nothing to do is a good time to do your nothing. End of chapter 6. End of part 1.